Week 2 began with KO versus Blake. KO's Whimsicott and Chi-Yu faced down Blake's Incineroar and Alolan Ninetales. Incineroar fakes out Chi-Yu, preventing it from moving, while Whimsicott's taunt prevents Ninetales from setting up Aurora Veil. KO switches Whimsicott into Ogerpon Wellspring, protecting it from a super effective Blizzard, while Chi-Yu's Heatwave OHKOs Ninetales. Incineroar does a bit of damage to the newly switched-in Ogerpon with Knockoff. Blake replaces Ninetales with Garganical. On the following turn, Ogerpon and Garganical protect, while Incineroar knocks off Chi-Yu's Life Orb. Ogerpon KOs Incineroar with Ivy Cudgel, and Chi-Yu does a chunk to Garganical's health before finally going down to Salt Cure. Whimsicott comes back in and Blake sends out Kingambit. Just like a previous turn, Ogerpon and Garganical protect, a play that allows KO to set up Tailwind for free because Kingambit targets Ogerpon. Whimsicott switches to Farigiraf, whose Armor Tail ability blocks Kingambit's priority Sucker Punch, and Ogerpon's Ivy Cudgel just barely doesn't KO Garganical, allowing it to set up Assault Cure on Farigiraf. Garganical protects, blocking Psychic, while Ivy Cudgel does a good chunk to Kingambit. Kingambit fires back with a super effective Kowtow Cleave, KOing Farigiraf. Rillaboom and Kyurem come in, and KO doubles into Kingambit with Fake Out and Horn Leech. On the next turn, both players use their Terrestrialization, Fire on KO's Rillaboom and Fairy on Blake's Kyurem. Ogerpon protects, blocking another Sucker Punch, while Kyurem uses Earth Power on Rillaboom and Rillaboom uses High Horsepower on Kingambit, knocking it down to red HP. Ogerpon switches to Whimsicott while Kingambit protects, but KO ignores it and lands a critical Wood Hammer that KOs Kyurem. Rillaboom goes down to the recoil damage, and the two players replace their fainted Pokemon with Sneasler and Landorus. KO goes for the same Protect and Tailwind play, but this time Blake attacks Whimsicott with Earth Power, doing about half of its health. Kingambit protects against a potentially deadly close combat, while Landorus' Sludge Bomb finishes off Whimsicott. Garganical comes back in, but quickly goes down to a close combat. It's down to the final Pokemon, KO's Ogerpon and Sneasler versus Blake's Kingambit and Landorus. Understanding the risk of Sneasler, Blake protects Kingambit, but KO ignores it and poisons Landorus with Dire Claw. Ogerpon KOs Landorus with Ivy Cudgel, and there's nothing Kingambit can do against a faster Sneasler. KO takes the game. The next match was Rin against Jude. Rin opens with Chi-Yu and Landorus, while Jude sends out Hatterene and Indeedee Female. Indeedee uses Follow Me, redirecting Dark Pulse and Sludge Bomb into itself, and ultimately going down as a result. However, this protection allows Hatterene to set up Trick Room unscathed. Torkoal comes in, Terrasilises to fire, and launches a sun-boosted eruption into Rin's team, but Landorus protects and Chi-Yu survives and fires back with Dark Pulse. Rin switches Landorus into their own Torkoal, while Chi-Yu goes down to Heatwave. Hatterene KOs Torkoal with Psychic Terrain boosted Expanding Force. Rin resets their side of the field with Rillaboom and Incineroar, exerting good fake-out pressure. Knowing this, Jude makes the defensive play protecting Torkoal and using Life Dew to heal a lot of its health. However, his exposed Hatterene takes a lot of damage from Incineroar's Flare Blitz. On the next turn, Rillaboom's priority Grassy Glide is enough to KO Hatterene, but not much later it goes down to Heatwave itself. Incineroar knocks off Torkoal's Charcoal. A lot of Pokemon are switched around until a Terra Water, Landorus, and Incineroar face down a Diancie and Raging Bolt. Diancie protects against Earth Power while Raging Bolt's Assault Vest is knocked off, leaving it vulnerable to future special attacks. Raging Bolt thunderclaps Incineroar, but Citrus Berry heals up most of the lost health. Another Earth Power OHKOs Diancie knockoff does a bit to Raging Bolt. Jude sends out Ursaluna and Rin switches to Whimsicott. Incineroar parting shots into Landorus, causing Thunderclap to fail. This switch allows Landorus to barely survive Ursaluna's Headlong Rush. Raging Bolt tries to Thunderclap, but it fails again, as Landorus protects and Whimsicott uses Moonblast, leaving Raging Bolt with red HP. Thanks to the combination of Guts and Burn, Ursaluna's Facade OHKOs Whimsicott. Incineroar replaces Whimsicott, and Fake Out is enough to KO Raging Bolt. With the speed in Rin's favor, their Landorus is able to outspeed and KO Ursaluna and Torkoal before they can move, giving Rin the game win. The next set was me against Connor. I lead with Ogerpon Wellspring and Raging Bolt, while Connor leads with Zapdos and Walking Wake. Expecting an electric attack from Zapdos, I switch Ogerpon to Rillaboom and use Priority Thunderclap to take a decent chunk of Walking Wake's health. Unfortunately, this leaves Raging Bolt vulnerable to Dragon Claw, but my prediction was correct, and Rillaboom shrugs off a resisted Thunderbolt. Connor switches Walking Wake to Torkoal while Zapdos protects against Fake Out, but Raging Bolt gets Torkoal into yellow HP with Dragon Pulse. The following turn, I double into Torkoal with Grassy Glide and Thunderclap in order to KO it. Zapdos does a bit to Raging Bolt with Ancient Power. Glomora comes in. I protect Raging Bolt, but this leaves Rillaboom wide open to Brave Bird and Sludge Bomb, a combo that ultimately KOs it. Ogerpon replaces Rillaboom. Our Pokemon trade attacks until Zapdos is in red HP, and the other 3 are at about half health. Both of Connor's Pokemon protect, but luckily I go for a low-risk play in Encore and Dragon Pulse. On the next turn, I take advantage of this vulnerability by Encoring Glimmora into Spiky Shield and getting a newly switched in Rillaboom into yellow HP with Dragon Pulse. Glimmora switches into Scizor in order to reset Encore, but Rillaboom goes down to another Dragon Pulse. Glimmora comes back in, but quickly goes down to a super effective Ivy Cudgel. I go for Calm Mind on Raging Bolt, and luckily Scizor goes for Light Screen. Walking Wake replaces Glimmora. On the next turn, Scizor's Bullet Punch does little to Ogerpon, and I Encore it into that attack. Raging Bolt eats another Dragon Claw before KOing Walking Wake with Calm Mind boosted Dragon Pulse. I waste the next turn by using Follow Me and Dragon Pulse into Zapdos, who protects. I Encore Zapdos into Protect, and do a bit of Scizor's health with Dragon Pulse. Ogerpon finally goes down to Bullet Punch, and I continue to whittle down Scizor with Dragon Pulse. I send Sneasler out, who absorbs the Toxic Spite set up by Glimmora earlier. I finally KO Scizor with Close Combat. Now that Zapdos' Encore is ending, it's vulnerable on the next turn, allowing me to close the game with another Dragon Pulse.
Out of can toothpaste.